also said only through law does man owe liberty and justice. Well, he is right, because law in its own nature has provided humanity with two things: justice, where the wrongs are right, where fairness prevails. It also provides us with a sense of security when it comes to our God-given rights, where we are bound, or other people are bound to encroach on our God-given rights at any time. Therefore, the law sets to become the very instrument that outlines the boundaries to ensure that our individual rights is not being infringed by anyone for that particular matter. So, law, in its simplest term, is a protective tool to ensure that justice prevails and also our God-given rights are protected. So, hear me out. What if the very same law that were meant to provide us with justice and protect our individual rights happens to be the very same instrument that dictators and government alike use to encroach on our God-given rights and deprive us of our deserving justice? That's an interesting thought, wouldn't it be?
To better understand the dynamics between law and morality and the dilemma that comes with it, it is important for us to analyze some of the examples that have taken place in the past and in today's world. For example, in the past, especially in the United States, prior to the introduction of the Civil Rights Acts of 1964, which outlaws discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, we can observe how the minorities in the United States are being deprived of equal opportunities compared to their fellow white Americans, especially when it comes to the matter of education, housing, transportation, financial schemes by fellow banks, and most importantly, job opportunities. What about the atrocities that is committed in front of our very own eyes today? What about the legislation and laws passed by the Zionist state of Israel that impose apartheid-like rule upon the Palestinians, where they are treated as if they are second-class citizens, where they are being oppressed every single day, where they are deprived of their own rights to live in their homeland? Do we sit ideally by the side? What sort of moral dilemma do we have to confront to ensure that the plights of the Palestinians are being resolved? All of this dilemma can be summed up in one question: do we have a duty to obey immoral law?
Hi everyone, my name is Muhammad Aiman from the Law 224 Semester 1 program, and today I am going to take a dive with all of you to explore the dilemma and the dynamics between law and morality from the Positivist school of thoughts. Lex injusta non est lex. That is the Latin maxim that can be literally translated to an immoral law is not a law at all. These are the words of a famous legal jurist by the name of Septimius Aquinas. That is because he argues for there to be a valid law, it must be sourced from the highest divine authority, where in its own manifestation, it is good in nature. But do the Positivist school of thought share the same opinion as this jurist? That is why we will first explore what is law, what is morality, followed by their dynamics, and last but not least, do we have the duty to obey immoral law in the first place according to the Positivist school of thoughts? So, here to my left on top, we have John Austin, one of the notable jurists of the Positivist school of thought. So, what is law according to his opinion? He believed that law by definition is a command set by sovereign to an inferior enforced by sanction. So let's take his words by literal sense. If I'm a king, you're a peasant, and I use my military guards to enforce a rule upon you, that is law. Now, what about the man below? A man that is so subtle in the way he looks. Well, that is H.L.A. Hart, one of the other notable jurists from the Positivist school of thought. Well, his perspective differs from those of John Austin. He believed that law, by definition, is a system of rules, specifically a systematic union of primary and secondary rules. So, what does that mean? Basically, he disagrees with what John Austin says because he believes that not every law is something that is enforced or imposed by the sovereign upon the inferior, enforced by sanctions. So that is a gist of what law means according to Positivist school of thoughts. So now that we're done with law, what about morality though? Well, again, according to John Austin, that guy is something else. Well, according to him, as a positivist jurist, he believed that morality can be defined as anything human made where rules governing human condition that lacks the essential of law, meaning that morality is not equivalent of law. Law in its nature is far more binding than morality can be, whereas morality simply derives from a set of conform societal norms where people conform to a certain standards and may derive from a set of values and beliefs. So that is what John Austin sees when it comes to morality. Now that we are done providing definition for law and morality, it is imperative that we understand what are the dynamics between those two so that we can answer the question, do we have the duty to obey immoral law? Now hear me out. According to the Positivist school of thought, they believe in a separability thesis where law and morality are two separate components. They are not intertwined, where law doesn't necessarily correlate to morality and where morality doesn't necessarily correlate to law. According to John Austin himself, law is separate from laws of God, from moral imperatives, and by definition from a natural law philosophy, meaning that simply if the law happens to be unfair doesn't make it to be an invalid law or a non-valid law. As long as the law was validly passed, regardless of its nature of being oppressive, unjust in nature, it is still a law. So the dynamic is law is not equivalent to morality. These are separate. We have established the dynamics between law and morality where we can come to a verdict where, according to Positivist school of thought, law and morality does not necessarily equivalent to one another. We can also now reach the conclusion of our thesis question. Do we have a duty to obey immoral law according to Positivist school of thoughts? Now, I'm sure you heard the name Aristotle. I mean, who doesn't? My God. Even though you're not into philosophy, surely you must heard of Aristotle. Well, hear me out. So Aristotle said that positive law should be obeyed, even if it's contrary to the natural law where the nature of God is wrong. But if the law is deficient, it should be obeyed. Doesn't matter if the law is oppressive in nature or the law is depriving you out of your fundamental rights. If it's validly passed by the superior body, or should I say the higher authority within that particular state, then yes, you have to obey that law. So now our questions has been finally answered, and we should move in to observe what are the real case scenario to better understand whether or not we have the duty to obey immoral. Now, in the context of Malaysia, for instance, we can observe some of the case law where it affirms the notion of law is not equivalent to morality as expected by the Positivist school of thoughts, where in the case of Jabbar against public prosecutor in 1995, the court held that it is not concerned with whether or not the law is fair, just or reasonable, because they believe that as long as the law has been validly passed by the legislative body, then it is a valid law. That we have reached the end of the video, we can conclude that according to the Positivist school of thoughts, that we have the duty to obey immoral law, because as discussed, law and morality is not equivalent to one another. According to Aristotle himself, the god or the father of modern philosophy, that even though the law might be deficient, might be immoral, as long as the law is the law of the land, then we have an obligation to obey those laws. With that, we have answered our question. My name is Muhammad Aiman Izzat bin M. Samuel, and I look forward to explore fundamental questions regarding philosophy in the future. Thank you very much.